I am wiredinlight, and on this channel I discuss topics around the intersection of philosophy, technology, and the esoteric, and I also make music under the name Mother Suo. So yeah, so welcome if you haven't seen my channel before. But I'm going to be talking about today what I'm going to be coining this the magical will to power. So what is the will to power? So Nietzsche came up with this idea, and the will to power is this idea that pretty much within each person there is this innate desire for power. Not power over others, but power to express oneself as truly as they can to the greatest of their ability. This is kind of a truism. There's kind of no argument against it, that people are most satisfied. I mean, this is my belief, I guess, that they are most satisfied when they are pursuing a higher form of self-expression, when they are putting their real thoughts out there, when they are going about their life in a way that's able to increase their health, their ability to extend themselves, their discipline, their free will, their choice is getting exercised. That's the most fulfilling life for most people, Nietzsche believed, and he believed this is kind of an innate drive that is within each of us. So the reason that I kind of like this concept is because I'm writing a article for my Substack, which will be linked in the description, called Why Stoicism Doesn't Go Far Enough, or Why Marcus Aurelius Didn't Go Far Enough, something along those lines. I'm not sure on the title yet, but pretty much, for those of you who don't know, Stoicism is kind of about ridding yourself of passions that trouble you and getting yourself as focused as possible on virtue, so that, you know, that's the most fulfilling life, I guess. There's not really an argument made for why. That's my issue with Stoicism, is that it's kind of just like, to not be troubled, just like make yourself be rid of passions, be like strong as a stone, and just be virtuous. But it doesn't tell you what virtue is. It doesn't tell you why to be virtuous. Whereas Nietzsche kind of does. He doesn't even say to be virtuous. He says to go towards, this is his more edgy side that I'm not like fully in agreement with, and there's more subjectivity around the interpretation of it, but you know, to go towards power, what is powerful for you, and this could be a force of good and it could be a force of bad. Nietzsche doesn't really get moralistic about it, and you know, the book Beyond Good and Evil kind of addresses some of those types of things. So basically though, I think that Nietzsche had a better formed view on what is fulfilling to humans. Aurelius had a really good perspective on how to not get destroyed by passions, addictions, etc. in this life, and to lead a generally fulfilling life. And for some people, I think Stoicism does go far enough. I think that for people where maybe they've been troubled by their impulses, but they aren't a person who is concerned with doing any like great works or anything like that, I think that Aurelius's perspective and Stoicism in general can be satisfactory. But overall, I think that Nietzsche's perspective is a less wasteful view. I don't really like philosophies that kind of just get you to an equilibrium and just keep you there. I like stuff that gets you through all of the array and gradient of emotions and experiences that the human experience can have, and that involves like achievement, that involves sorrow, that involves loss, gain, etc. And that's what I like about him. But Nietzsche was a person who did not necessarily condone a belief in the metaphysical meaning beyond the spiritual realm. Nietzsche was pretty vehemently anti-Christian at the time, and he viewed any sort of faith that made you kind of submit yourself and put yourself below something as negative, and something that was kind of destroying this will to power. So this is where I kind of differ from Nietzsche, and this is what pulled me away from his philosophy. Was, you know, there's a philosopher who came after him, Kierkegaard was a Christian philosopher. I myself am not a Christian, and Kierkegaard didn't say that you needed to be a Christian, but he claimed that Nietzsche's perspective was not going to be satisfactory for the vast majority of people, and even potentially the few that do excel philosophically. He argued that people needed what he coined a leap of faith, which all of you have heard this term. It comes from Kierkegaard. And the leap of faith is this idea of pretty much to maintain a meaning in your life, to be fulfilled, to retain this kind of chest held high, like pursuit of life, you have to point yourself to something that is beyond you. Otherwise, we are at the whim of our impulses. And a lot of people, a lot of atheists will say, well, if you need religion to be a good person, to be the best version of yourself, then you're not a very good person. I used to say that when I was an atheist, when I was like 13. And I believed this for a long time, right? You shouldn't need religion to make it so you don't like hurt a person or like steal, right? You shouldn't need religion to get through those types of moral dilemmas. But the only reason, if we truly have nothingness beyond us and we are just the material, then really the only reason to excel in anything is just your brain chemistry and impulse. Hedonism, the desire just for blatant pleasure, is no lower of a moral ideology than somebody who, you know, creates a cure for a horrible disease or something like that. Under this material view, that's kind of objectively true. There's, you know, somebody can argue with me and that, oh, well, like, it's it's less wasteful, you know, it's a less wasteful use of your life. Why does waste matter if there's nothing, if there's no reason to be generative? What is the benefit of being healthy if there is no beyond, if there is no, you know, oh, you get to live a longer life. Okay, for what? So that you can achieve more, so that you can enjoy more pleasure? What's the purpose in that? So that's why, you know, to truly experience that full spectrum of emotions, you have to believe in something that's beyond you, in my opinion. Otherwise, you can always go to the impulse of dulling your emotions, dulling your senses, because there's no reason not to, you know? So I really like this concept of the will to power. I really like Nietzsche's view of trying to create meaning for yourself, to navigate the rough waters of life on your own intuition and to assert your will on this earth. But for me, I personally had to develop a belief in the beyond, in something that is beyond me. So why did I title this video The Magical Will to Power? So magic is kind of a funny word to a lot of people. I know for a long time it was for me. So I'm gonna use Aleister Crowley's definition of magic from Thelema. And this is that magic is using one's will to assert change on the physical realm around them, pretty much. So Crowley, a very controversial figure. Thelema, kind of a controversial religion. I don't consider myself a Thelemite. I don't consider Crowley to be like an amazing person or something. But Thelema has a very interesting law. It is the #1 highest law of the religion, which is do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. That is the, in quotes, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. And a lot of people, like edgy people, go, oh bro, just do whatever you want, man. Like that's the whole of the law. Like that's what's most spiritual, is just to do whatever you want. And that's not at all what Crowley meant. He actually meant the opposite of that. He lived a life that made it look like that, but he did not mean that. What do what thou wilt is, so the will, by Crowley, so this is a, like by his definition, the will is kind of your highest self. There's your lower self, which is your physicality. This is just kind of your baseline existence, you know, how you operate in the flesh. And there's the will, which is the soul, which is what pilots the self, or sorry, the true self, which is your soul, the true will. And this is kind of what pilots your body, what, you know, truly enacts change in the world. Obviously, you know, if we talk free will, do humans have free will? If I take 5 milligrams of Xanax right now and drink a bottle of wine, I'm not gonna have the free will to give an amazing speech. I wouldn't even be able to make this video, right? But my decision to make this video, some people would argue, oh, that's just physical impulse. Other people would say, you know, I'm pointing myself at a higher desire that comes from my soul. You know, I believe in that. I believe in the soul. I believe in the highest self. And I believe that your decisions at all times, your free will, is to go towards your lowest self, which is your base desires, your base physicality, and then your highest self, which is your true soul. And this ties in with a psychological perspective of individuation and self-actualization being the best thing for a patient to attain. You know, if you have a patient in a therapeutic setting, helping them to self-actualize and individuate is, I mean, this is more psychoanalytic, but that is kind of your goal as a therapist, is to get them, you know, not just to their baseline, you know, back to like baseline, but to go beyond that and to really figure out what their highest self is. So tying this back into the will to power, and it's funny, there's a lot of words getting mixed up here, you know, the true will in Thelema, the will to power in Nietzsche's view, you know, will is kind of being thrown around a lot here, and they're different things. Will in Nietzsche's perspective is just like this will to power is this innate desire, right? Whereas Crowley was saying true will, which is the soul. This is kind of just his word for soul. And in philosophy and like esotericism and stuff in general, these words get very complex because, you know, another more atheistic philosopher, Schopenhauer, he viewed the will as the opposite of exactly what we're talking about, which is he viewed the will as kind of this force of nature that's around you, that you are actually the point that has to push against the will. So he viewed the will as it's what will happen, you know, it's just this constant kind of storm of what goes on in the world, the nature of it, and then it's your responsibility, Schopenhauer believed, to live the most fulfilling life to push against that. So we're talking about all these different things, but so my purpose with this video is discussing the magical will to power. So again, I mentioned the definition of magic by Crowley. So let's talk about it though. Let's talk about magic and mysticism. So mysticism, what is that? It is the attempt for a human to convene with / connect with the divine, with what is beyond them. That's what mystics are. There's mystics in all sorts of religions and faiths. There are all types of mystics, right? There's Christian mystics. There's Hindu mystics. And all a mystic is a person who's attempting to convene with the divine. It doesn't mean that you're this person who has to go like live in the woods for a million years and not talk to anybody. A mystic can be anyone who is, let's say, trying to do more intense prayer. You can be Christian and just trying to have a stronger connection and closeness with God during prayer. That is a mystical practice. And a mystic is anybody who really dedicates themselves to a practice of trying to attain more of this. And so basically, some people get scared of magic, you know, this enacting change with your will, you know, like a spiritual change that you're creating, right? But why are people so scared of this, right? If somebody is using their power to create good in the world, what is wrong with that? You know, let's say that you are a Christian. Jesus used magic basically to heal the sick, and a lot of people would say, oh well, that's because he's God, so God's allowed to do that. So let's say that you're an able-bodied person and you've got the medical knowledge to save somebody's life. You know, by the logic that you're not supposed to, you know, oh, you're not supposed to do anything that is like like tapping into higher power or anything like that. If let's say that the deciding factor between you saving this person's life and not is you getting this emotional motivation to do it, that's almost spiritual. How is that not magic? What's not magic about that, right? So I had to break a lot of conditioning in myself over time with this, that anything that is mystical, attempting to convene with the divine, that it is not a negative thing, that it's not bad, that there's a lot of positivity that can come from it. You just have to target this at positivity. It's kind of like with Nietzsche's will to power. Let's say that in the process of this kind of will to power, you gain a lot of power over others. You become a very powerful person in the world. And you can then utilize that for good, or you can utilize it for bad. That comes down to your true will, which is kind of what Crowley was talking about. One of the views in Thelema is that this principle of do what thou wilt is the whole of the law is applied to every single person. You don't have to opt into the religion for this to be a true thing for you. You just have to be a person who is alive. So you can be a Christian and that is true for you, that your highest will, your best self, your soul is where your responsibility lies. And I would say that most evil that goes on in this world is a result of bodily desire, impulse, things of that nature. I don't think that it's people's real soul. I think there maybe can be true soulful evil. I'm not fully sure on that yet. I don't know what evil is precisely. I do know that it's real though. I don't have a set perspective, but pretty much my purpose in this video is that mystical practices, attaining more spiritual power, and I don't mean power over others, and like people need to get rid of this like view that power is wicked, but to increase one's abilities in whatever their spiritual leaning is a good thing. It allows you to enact more good, more positive change. Your intuition will be stronger. You're more connected with your true self. There's nothing wrong with all these things. So this is why I've become a lot more open to things that are labeled and deemed to be magic, right? That word, it's kind of a funny word, right? It sounds dumb. A lot of people, like, if you said you believed in that kind of thing, they would think that you're dumb. But really, like, if you're part of any religion, you believe in magic to an extent. Baptism, what makes a baptism special? What makes any of these ritual ceremonies special is that everybody's will in this environment, in this group ritual, is focused on the kind of good nature of this transformative experience. It's initiatory in a social sense, in a psychological sense, and also it's attempting to be initiatory in a spiritual sense. And what is wrong with that, right? That's magic. That is using those people's wills to enact change on the physical. That's at least what the attempt of it is, you know? So what I'm getting at is that you can kind of morph all these philosophies together, and this is what I do. I really liked Nietzsche for a long time, but I got more into the kind of Kierkegaard philosophy that you need some sort of leap of faith. And for me, what is that faith gonna be? Just some sort of a belief in the beyond. I struggle with, in all my religious study, I've struggled to find one religion that fits best for me. So I'm what is called generally like a perennialist, which is the belief that there's kind of a true undercurrent to all faiths. And that, to an extent, I believe different faiths can work better for different people, even though it's an attempt to point all towards one truth. So I would say that, like, for me, it's been most beneficial to go at all this stuff with an open mind and to have more of a universalist perspective, that all of this stuff was people's attempts at beating nihilism. It was people's attempts at creating good change in the world, to motivate themselves and others. Obviously, yes, there's dark sides of religions, but if you take if you take that as what the religion itself is, or what you can gain from the religion, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Because this happened recently with a friend. I was talking to somebody about, he's very Christian, and I was saying that it's much better to be a pagan than it is to be a nihilist. And I'm also not like, I don't consider myself pagan. I'm not against paganism. I just was using this as an example. And he was saying, no, like, pagans are worshiping the creation and not the creator itself. And like, this always leads to debauchery and sin. And it's a very rigid view. I mean, it always leads to this, right? So yeah, if you look at the past, all the like Baal and Moloch worship and stuff like that, and you take that as that's what paganism is, then of course you're going to just think, oh, it always ends in people doing atrocities, right? But you can also look at religion and think that the end of religion is always atrocities as well. Look at all the religions that people have gotten fundamentalist about. All the Abrahamic faiths have led to atrocities. Look at what's going on in the world right now in general. Religion leads to atrocities a lot of times. And that's not me saying that as some edgy person, oh, like, fuck religion. Religion's great. You know, theology is great. But, and I don't even know if I'd say religion is great. Just having a belief in the beyond is great. But obviously all of these faiths have led to atrocities, and it's not really your responsibility as a person to have to identify with one singular faith as your pure dedication, and then try to argue that, like, oh, well, like, those weren't the real people who did it, because you can do that with any faith. But anyways, my point is, it's been very beneficial for me to morph all these philosophies together to get, you know, the core of what got me into all this was Nietzsche, and then deciding for myself that living just off of material motives, not when I say material, I don't mean like getting a Louis bag. I mean material as in like just this physicality does not work for me. It's not enough. And I think it's not enough for anybody, actually. I think that some people just can remain ignorant to it for longer. But basically getting his philosophy, integrating that a lot into myself, but then deciding I need to point myself to something beyond, still kind of being in the process of trying to figure out what God and divinity is to me, but then understanding that it's my responsibility in this life to connect with my soul to the best of my ability and to enact the most change and good that I can while I am here and healthy. So this is my purpose for this video. If you are able-bodied, even if you're not, whatever you've got of yourself, utilize it for good. Connect with your true soul. Connect with what is beyond you if you can. You know, these are not evil things. This is not bad. you know, do do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, meaning like connect with your higher will, really, like truly, like you've got this life, so everything that is holding you down here in the physical realm, whatever it is, vice, like just any of it, right? Just like shed it, do away with it. You're going to be operating in this world with your ego and your self that you perceive. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying I'm pretty anti the ascetic route of going and just being a monk, and it's basically suicide. I actually view it as pretty selfish to an extent. I don't think that's a good way of living. I'm not saying to do that. Don't do away with the physical in that way. Try to shed your limiting lower path in search of the higher path. And if you do that, if you really truly try to do that and you always point yourself towards it, then there's no way that you are going to be living a bad life. Things might hurt, there might be suffering, there's going to be suffering for sure. But this is the way. And this is, to me, what is the most meaningful way to live. I think that there's nothing that is going to be able to shut it down for me. And yeah, that's pretty much my take. So anyways, thank you for watching. And if you guys would like to, I have music under the name Mother Suo that you can check out on Spotify, SoundCloud, My other videos kind of touch on philosophy around technology, and I'm going to be doing more stuff in that kind of arena, but I'm just getting into this esotericism and philosophy and this kind of merge of all of it. So thank you for watching. I genuinely appreciate it. And check out my Substack, which I'm going to link in the description. So anyways, peace.
Remain wired and light.